Hello, my name is Bubble, and I sometimes go by the name of Simon, and this is a thoughts video. This is my thoughts video on Santa Maria. This is a dice placement game and economic management game, essentially. This came out of Essen, and I think a lot of people didn't really know a lot about it when it came out. It almost surprised a lot of people when it did, and a lot of people really did enjoy it. The game is fairly simple. On your turn, you're going to be doing one of four actions. You can either place a dice down, and the dice kind of slots into this kind of grid-based system and gives you various resources. And you kind of want to do it so that you aren't overlapping on dice, because dice will then fill up spots. You could take an action to basically get more territory or get more grids. This again allows for when a dice does slide down to get more resources. You can also do things like pass for your turn if you can't do anything else, and then you choose one bonus action. You can also do other things such as sell your goods to kind of make choices, and of course you can also put money on different spots to activate those things as well. It's a fairly standard game. You are essentially going to be competing with your friends in terms of what dice, because at the start of each round, there's only 3 rounds in the game, and the game plays quite quick. But at the start of each round, all the dice get kind of just chucked and randomized, and essentially you're going to be almost drafting and selecting the dice that you want. What this means is you have that tension created where someone might take that 2 dice that you really need. What's nice is as the game progresses, you also get blue dice, and blue dice always slot in from the side, whereas your white dice always slot in from the top. And of course, throughout the course of the game, there are various technologies you can buy. If you get this 2 tracks. There's a Conqueror's track, and there is the Diplomat's track, or the one where you send a person to the Native Americans to convince them that you're not taking over their land. Look, I mean, if the theme is colonization, it's in the title already, but you send the person out, and that person will either give you technology or access to a technology which will improve your game, or give you access to a cool special ability, or you can also send it to tell them to go get resources, and you might come back with 2 gold, or you might come back with 3 happiness, which is essentially victory points in this game. Or you can also send a person to the objective side, and the objectives all score in various ways. Some objectives might want you to have a 4x4 grid, what other ones might want you to have, say, 4 different buildings in a row, or 4 different buildings vertically, or another one, and so on and so forth. These will be randomized each game, so that kind of increases the replayability. That's Santa Maria overall in a nutshell. Now, a lot of people like it, I think, because it plays quite nicely and you have so many meaty decisions. I've honestly spent so many times in this game just sitting there thinking, oh God, what do I do now? Because there are so many choices. If you put a gold onto one of your spots, you get that spot, but then that spot's blocked. Which means what happens if you use a dice then that goes into that spot, but then you don't want to use that dice, but then there's only so many dice left, and someone else might take the dice because you did your action to take gold instead, and you want to be like, okay, well, maybe I can go grab a grid piece and put that into my grid, but then I don't really know where I should put it because there's different places it can go, and this dice will only interact on this grid, so maybe I want to put it in this line, but then if I do that, then I'm still missing the turn, so someone might take the dice because I put my grid into the 2 space, and now someone else might take the 2 dice. There's a lot of thinking to go into this game, and I think that's why it's so incredibly rewarding. Now, I do have not a lot of issues with the game. I think it plays generally very well overall. I think it's an easy enough game to teach people. There's a lot of thought involved in what your choices are. However, I do have a couple of problems. Firstly, the native track does seem to be one of the strongest things you can probably go for in the early game, and you almost handicap yourself if you don't. The native track not only gives you access to technologies or bonus resources, but it also gives you access to objectives, and if someone else ever goes onto that objective as well, you get rewarded because they have to pay you 2 gold, and if they can't pay you 2 gold, they can't go onto that spot. Also, the higher up on the native track you also get access to a blue dice. So you can have access to up to 3 blue dice on your turn, or during a round, essentially. What this means is, essentially, you get more actions. That already indicates that you probably should be going for that. Now, there's also the Conqueror's track. The Conqueror's track kind of gives you a bonus at the end of the round if you're the furthest person ahead. And there's a little tussling between if you are the first person to get to the one spot or if you get the second person to get to the spot. And you also get gold, which is a wild resource that you can use if you get past a certain amount of places. It's a very important track to make sure that you always at least are in the running for. If you're coming second or third, you're still getting a good amount of points, but you don't want someone to always come first. So there's a bit of tackling to try and figure out if you should be going for that. Because if you're not going for that conquest track, you need to be generating your victory points elsewhere. And there's not a lot of choices. You can either find a tile that might say trade your gems into 3 happiness or victory points, or you might want to try and go and amass shipping tiles, which will then generate you points over the course of 3 rounds, but then you have to work out, well, that's only going to give me really 6 points for the rounds, but those also give you points by awarding contracts. The native track does seem to be one of the strongest things for the game. The person who generally does well at the native track is the person that will most likely win. In most cases, the games I've played, that's generally what has happened. The person that specializes in that tends to be rewarded the most for it, especially because they get golden bonuses. Another issue I kind of have with the game is the dice are nice, the wooden pieces are nice, the artwork is kind of not good. It's not bad by any standard, but in this day and age, to see something that looks like it was drawn by basically grade 6 art students, it doesn't really invoke a good spirit. You know, you have other games that feature the same kind of theme, like Archipelago, which has beautiful island pieces going for it, and this kind of has, again, I mean, you just look at the image here and you can see the man has 2 buck teeth sticking out. I'm not saying that it's bad artwork. This clearly a person has put time and effort into making this. But you kind of look at the board and it's just really drab. You look at your player board, it looks really drab. There's no like motivation in a sense. There's nothing that's like, that's a cool theme. That's like really thought-provoking. Oh, that looks cool. Maybe I'm just going to go for that piece because it looks pretty. There's never anything like that. And I think that's probably a big letdown to the game. You know, you have this wonderful open grid of spaces available to you at the start of the game, and you slowly fill it up, but then you kind of filling it up with just really boring pieces. They're not boring in terms of mechanics, no, but just they don't really look very nice. You know, you would have a road piece, and the road piece is just a person who you can barely see, and then it's just 4 green spaces and a few white lines. I'm exaggerating, of course, but it does feel like there's no real give to it. Another big thing about the game is, while it is a lot of fun to play, I kind of feel like it's not really go into my collection, just simply because there's other dice game I'd rather play. Again, I would probably, instead of getting this, I'd probably go ahead and buy the expansion to Marco Polo, which is a much more fun game that still has the same feeling of really hectic dice placement. But again, it's up to you. If you want a more grid-based system and working of tiles and having dice slide in and having a nice combination of manage to fill up a whole row and then drop a dice down, you get wood, you get silk, you get spice, you get some more wood and some more gems. That feels so satisfying. But at the same time, again, there's not really a good space in my collection for the game. I can understand why the game has got a low praise. I can see its good points going forward. However, for how much you're going to get for it, if you can get a cheap price, maybe go for it. You might find some traction here. But I think this might be a game, honestly, that you'll probably play 3 or 4 times, and it might just fade away. I think that's probably what's going to happen to this game. It's not a classic by any standard. It's not a Marco Polo by any standard. And I think it's probably going to be forgotten by the time Gen Con or Essen rolls around this year again. But again, if I had to give it a score, I would probably say 8 out of 10 or probably 7 out of 10. 8 out of 10 might be a bit too generous. But it is a good game at its heart. A few nagging issues, but it is a good game. Anyway, if you have enjoyed my thoughts video, please remember to leave a like and of course subscribe. I will always do 1 video a week. That is one of the promises I've put forward, going, well, basically for the rest of 2018, if I'm lucky. And of course, if you have any comments, maybe this was your pick for Gen Con, maybe this was your pick for Essen, that you alone thought that no one else would know about. Who knows? Anyway, thank you again so much for watching. Bye-bye.